Hello and welcome to the EFL Playoff Final Preview from the Honest Football Podcast. I'm Craig Savage, and with me, as always, is Daniel Cody. Charlie Betts is not here today. So we've had 6 frantic, all the works in these semi-finals in all 3 leagues. And now we've got 3 more games left, and we're going to start off with Saturday's game. It is the Championship Playoff Final, the richest game in club football, as they say. It is Brentford versus Swansea. We'll start with Brentford, Cody. They had to come from behind, not once, but obviously, 1-0 down in the first leg. Second leg, catastrophically in the first 5 minutes from their own corner, go 2-0 behind. But the luck went on their side finally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was luck to an extent, but they did have the pressure on. The second leg, they were thoroughly deserving in the end, but I do wonder what would have happened if there wasn't a first half red card, because at that point, it was 1-1 on the day. It was 2-1 on aggregate to Bournemouth, and they looked okay. But we did say that Jonathan Woodgate might have found out tactically, and that seemed to be the case in that one, because the decisions after the red card, taking David Brooks off and a change of tactic, I really felt it cost Bournemouth, because up until that point over the whole tie, I think they've been brilliant, and I think they'd outfoxed Brentford, In terms of Brentford, though, they did their job well. They scored the goals, they created chances, and the pressure was just too much. They piled it on. They were absolutely brilliant, but you mentioned it there. That goal they conceded at the start of the second leg is probably, to get a spoiler in early, the main thing that's playing on my mind from predicting a Brentford win. Everything else about it is telling me Brentford will win this game, but that goal was so bad. From a Sunday league and amateur and kids point of view, you would be absolutely hammered for it. So to see it in the Championship playoff semi-final was a bit of a worry, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly when it's the first 5 minutes of the game. If it was the last 2 minutes of the game and they needs to get something, I could understand that. But to do that in the first 5 minutes, because they normally used to have Rico Henry stay back for corners. He's the only one that's staying back for corners because he's a very quick guy. And he wasn't playing. So to do that, it shows a bit of naivety, should I say, in the players that don't do that job that Rico Henry does, and from Thomas Frank that actually tactically should have really done better. But they got the penalty. I think it was a penalty. Some people, I don't think you think it was a penalty, but I thought it was a penalty. I don't know why his hands are there. No, it's in the silhouette, but I don't think both his hands need to be there. In my opinion, they withheld the pressure this time, come from 2 down to get to win 3-2 on aggregate. It's how they deal with it in the final. I think that little bit of momentum to come from behind will add that. And from what happened last season, got into the playoff final themselves. Hopefully they can use that great experience. Swansea, on the other hand, they won 2-1 on aggregate against Barnsley, but they didn't have it all their way.
No, I mean, if you look at the stats of the second leg, and if you looked at the last sort of half an hour of the second leg, it was a little bit nervy, I think it would be fair to say. I think one of the things we've got to bear in mind for both of these semi-finals, and it doesn't so much apply in League One when we get to that, but actually we probably underestimated the value of having home fans back. Because for Brentford, I'm not sure they win that game without it. For Swansea, I could have seen them conceding a second without it as well. So actually, I think that that's made a big difference here. I mean, in the first leg, Swansea were exemplary on the road. They did exactly what they needed to. It wasn't quite the law, but it could have been. They had a couple of other decent chances. But at home, I mean, they were fortunate in the end. I would say Barnsley posed the threat on the break, particularly away from home. We said they'd be a little bit stronger. We said they'd have a little bit more on the counter-attack. But Swansea withheld it, and they're just starting to find a little bit of form at the right time. They had a stuttering finish to the season. But with holding Barnsley in that situation, I think will be a big confidence boost for them. And it makes the final, combined with Brentford's defending at times, a bit closer to call and a bit harder to predict than it would have been otherwise, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy prediction to make, to be honest. Swansea weren't great in the second leg, to be honest, especially in the second half. They had to hold on, and you're spot on about getting caught on the counter attack, and he did that for the goal itself, for Woodrow, which was a very good strike. And I think that's Brentford are quick to get on the counter attack themselves, so it's something to keep an eye on, especially in the final of a big pitch like Wembley. But let's get the prediction in now. Charlie Betts has gone for a Swansea win.
Ooh.
He thinks he's stuck to Brentford bottling it all season.
Even with Winston Reid.
Even with Winston Reid. He has gone for a Swansea 2-1 win against Brentford. He said it all season. He's sticking with it. I disagree. I think the time is now right for Brentford to finally take the step up into the Premier League, a new club into the Premier League. I think they've got a major hurdle because like that, the bookies were saying one of the two teams on that side of the draw would get promoted. I think they go over a massive hurdle in Bournemouth. I'm going to go the opposite scoreline, to be honest. I'm going to go with 2-1 to Brentford. How do you see it?
Well, I would say I should be, despite your brilliance over the 46 games in comparison, I am the only one who predicted the final correctly. So I should be the voice of authority for this one. But I'm agreeing with you, I'm afraid, because Brentford have been in better form generally. And I know it's so easy to say that they could bottle it, but Brentford, bar that first leg against Bournemouth, have won 5 in a row in all competitions, in the Championship proper season and in the second leg. And that's got to stand for something. The confidence of getting over that hurdle from 2-0 down on aggregate, I think will make such a big difference. Swansea have got a slightly less experienced side in the bigger games, perhaps. I think that would be fair to say. And Brentford, a lot of those players have been there before, particularly in the defensive positions last year. So I think it's going to make a difference. I think it will be second time lucky in the final. I think, and I hate to say it for the neutral because it's the sort of league that we say is brilliant all season. I think it's going to be a turgid, awful game of football. So I'm going to go for 1-0 to Brentford. Ivan Toney to win it from either a toe poke or the penalty spot. And I think it will be an awful game of football. I'm very sorry to say.
Let's move on to Sunday. League One. It's between Blackpool and Lincoln. It's a tough game. Two teams, they had their misfortunes in the past. Lincoln obviously got relegated into the National League and progressed very well. I'm going to start talking about them. Did you see them getting over the line against Sunderland? I know they got gifted that second goal in the first leg, but did you think with the crowd at the stadium, like fans back in there, do you think they might have caved in a little bit?
I did think they might, to be honest. And let's be fair, it almost worked out that way. Sunderland in that second leg, ironically, given what's happened and what went on in the aftermath, it was probably one of their best performances in a long time. I mean, it's one of the first times they've mustered 20 shots in a couple of months. And Lincoln, in the end, were quite fortunate in the second leg. And you mentioned that second goal in the first leg. That ended up being the crucial goal. Because without that, we could have been talking about a very different final here. But for Lincoln, the job was done at home. And we mentioned maybe the stadium alike, but Sincil Bank, the Lincoln fans are very, very forceful and supportive. And they made a bigger difference, I would argue, or as big a difference, if not. So for Lincoln, I'm not surprised they made it. I guess it fits the pattern of the Championship, which their opponents won't, which is the home fans made the difference. The home leg helped. But I would say they were still slightly fortunate to hang on in the second leg. But they've got a good side. They've got confidence. And despite, again, a patchy end to the season, you think everyone thought a couple of years ago when Danny Cowley went that it was all going to start to go downhill. So for them to be in this position is a massive credit to the club. And it just shows how well it's run off the pitch and how big a role the supporters play.
Exactly. And speaking of supporters are now going back. Obviously, they're getting a 40-month gap, but supporters are going back to Bloomfield Road at Blackpool. Neil Critchley, in his first full season, has worked wonders there, got them to third place. They looked really ruthless in the first leg, winning 3-0 at Oxford. Second leg, I think they might have taken the foot of the gas, conceded some sloppy goals, but still, they know how to get the ball in the back of the net. Jerry Yates, 21 goals this season. Ellis Sims, on loan from Everton, scoring a few goals as well this season. Considering Blackpool have got the best goal conceded record in the league, beating Hull, who won the league, do you think conceded 3 in the second leg, do you think that would be a bit of a surprise for them and maybe a little bit of a confidence boost for Lincoln?
I don't know. It's quite hard to tell. I mean, I agree with you to start with. They were unbelievable in the first leg. 4 shots on target, 3 goals, ruthless on the counter-attack. And, I mean, let's be honest, it's a bit of a difficult position to be in that second leg because when you're 3-0 up, your opposition have no other option than to come out of the traps gung-ho, like Brentford did when they didn't need to. But that's what Oxford did, and they got that early goal, and there's always going to be that bit of panic. But I don't think at any stage they really looked in any threat of losing the tie, to be fair to them. They did give up a lot of possession against Oxford, and that's something that would tend to do. They're a better counter-attacking side. But I do worry against Lincoln, who like to put the pressure on, who maybe have that slightly more direct style and are better from set pieces. If that would be a worry if you're bringing pressure onto yourself. You can't afford to give away free kicks 30, 35 yards out. You can't afford to give away corners and throw-ins in attacking positions. So that's the side of it that probably worries me more. Having said that, if there's anyone who knows how to keep a clean sheet, like you've said, it's Blackpool. They've got 5 in a row before that second leg. So we have to say it's probably just a blip in the road. And for Lincoln, yes, they've had 3 clean sheets, but they've conceded 3 twice and then 2 at Sunderland. So I honestly feel that this potentially plays into Blackpool's hands because on the counter-attack, they're a really strong side. And Lincoln, I don't know that they've got the defensive quality to withhold it. So again, I'm a little bit torn on this. But the one thing I'm going to say is I think it'll be a more entertaining game.
Let's get on to that prediction of Blackpool versus Lincoln. Charlie Betts has gone for Blackpool to win 3-1. How do you see it?
Well, I can kind of understand the thought, to be honest, because I will be honest and say this now, and I know the Blackpool fans won't like it. I thought it was arguably the biggest surprise of the playoffs. Once Oxford got in, I thought that was it, because obviously they started the season awfully and rose through the league. So I thought they would be able to do it. But Blackpool have proved everyone wrong all season, so I have to bank on them to do it once more. But Lincoln fans at Wembley, oh dear. No, Blackpool are going to nick it. It's going to be 2-1. It'll be a good game of football. And I'm betting the stats will be almost identical down the middle at the end, bar possession.
I think we'll have to agree on a Blackpool win. Actually, Sincilbank in the Championship. People moan about Kenilworth Road
I'd love to go there.
Ground being the Championship. Sincilbank in the Championship. No, and that's no disrespect for Bloomfield Road. It's a nice stadium themselves. But Sincilbank, just that old nostalgia and have old nostalgia ground in the Championship is for me, it's great. Not gonna lie. But I think Blackpool will. I'm gonna have to go the same scoreline you, but it's gonna go all the way. I'm gonna go into extra time in this game. I think it's gonna be very tight, very cagey. Entertaining but cagey at the same time. Blackpool for me to win 2-1. Let's go on to League Two on Bank Holiday Monday. It's the Kevin Ellison derby of Morecambe versus Newport County. Imagine that at the start of the season when Kevin Ellison gets released from Morecambe. He will be facing them at Wembley in the playoff final. Let's start with Morecambe because I've had them tipped for relegations a couple of times a few seasons ago. But what a wonderful job they've done. They've never had that dip in form. They've always stayed around in the playoffs. Could history be made because they never reached League One before?
I mean, it's an interesting question. I guess the good thing is that despite the fact they lost Kevin Ellison, I know there's been a little bit of shall we say, furore around that, and there's been some goal celebrations and things that have gone on in the season as well, that they've still got a fairly experienced squad. And just they've got quality and experience through the team. The likes of Aaron Wildig is an experienced midfielder now. We talk about Knight Percival at the back as a good leader, Cole Lefferen in goal even so. They've got quality throughout. And I'm finding it hard-pressed to go for it because of who they're up against and how they played in their game and their recent history as well. But you couldn't put it past Morecambe. Again, they're one of those sides, and both of these are in this case, 2 sides who were in really good form before the end of the season. Actually, it's probably the first playoff final where both of the teams have been in really good form going into the end of the season. They both look confident in their playoff semi, albeit there was a little blip in the road for their opponents. But Morecambe have been really strong. They're good defensively again. They very rarely concede more than 1 a game. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think it's probably going to be more similar to the Championship final than the League One final. I think it will be a bit more cagey. I think it will be a bit more reserved. I think both teams will have a bit more to lose because, like you say, they've not been in that position. No one expected them to be there. How are they going to react when they get there? But both sides have done brilliantly to get there. And Morecambe, you'd be very hard pressed to write them off, wouldn't you?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And they were very good. Very, 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 very good. Carlos Mendes Gomez, I was very impressed with him. I think he's been linked with a few Championship clubs this summer already. So I'm very impressed with them. Let's get on to Newport, the opponents. That second leg was quite completely, utterly bonkers. I just how did you get to that? Because they were comfortable 2-0 lead beforehand, and then they completely just capitulated, and then somehow found that spark and got the 2 goals. And finally, in extra time, they got over the line. Well, if you look on the highlights, he slips over, it goes in, but you might have to look at that and think your name's on the trophy.
You potentially do, and it comes back to that man that you mentioned a moment ago, doesn't it? Kevin Ellison started it off with well, let's say a blast from the past, shall we? It was a wonderful effort, and they looked down and out at that point. And Forest Green, we all tipped them to be up there this season. We knew Forest Green were a good side. So to do that, when you get into the position where you think it's all slipped away, to be 2-0 up and to see it slip back and to be behind on aggregate, there aren't many teams who could bounce back. It says a lot for the spirit. They've had a lot of knockbacks in the last couple of years, players having to retire early, players leaving the club and moving to higher divisions. But there seems to be a spirit in that Newport dressing room. We've seen it in various cup runs. We've seen it in various late runs in the league. There's something there that you just think, like you say, could their name be on the trophy? The problem is both of these sides have so much experience in the ranks. And normally you'd look at this, like we said with Morecambe, and think, how are they going to react being on this big stage? But you're talking about players who have got so much experience. The likes of, they bought Kevin Ellison and Nicky Maynard off the bench. I mean, that's a different level of EFL experience. They're starting Patrick Hammond to start with. They've got the likes of Josh Sheehan, the skipper, in the middle. Liam Shepherd at right back. Tom King goals a good keeper at that level as well. There is so much experience between these two sides. And that's what makes me think it's going to be a cagey game. Despite the 4-3 in the second leg for Newport, I genuinely, of the three, this is the one I really don't know which way to go. Because there's so little between them. They have such similar profiles. And the only difference really, to an extent, is the slight style of football. But that could end up cancelling each other out as well. So I'm hoping that you or Charlie will shed a bit of light on what I should go for here.
Do you know what? I totally agree with what you're saying about Championship League 2 being the more cagey affair of the game, playoff final game. And I totally agree, because I think these two teams are not used to a massive pitch, a decent pitch. And that's no disrespect to the Rodney Parade and the Mazuma Stadium. It's just it's just Wembley. It's Wembley. It's massive, massive. I think the players might tire out as well in that sort of way. And the quality will dip. What worried me for Newport is that they just got absolutely battered for an hour or so. They got completely battered in the second leg. But this Michael Flynn has got a very good record for Newport. He knows how to do it on the big stage. I know he hasn't done well in certain recent playoffs, but when you get a good cup game, when you get to Premier League sides, he does tend to, Newport do tend to turn on the style. I think this is a really hard one to predict, actually. This I can easily pick the first two, but this one's really hard. So I'm going to start with Charlie Betts' prediction. To make our lives a little bit easier. He has gone for Morecambe to go up 2-0 win for them. I don't know.
I don't think there'll be that much daylight in it.
No. Nor do I. I'm going to have to go for the distance. I'm going to go all the way this time. I think it's going to end 1-1 on the day. I think it's going to go to penalties. And I'm going to say, I'm going to go Newport. Newport to win on penalties. And it's going to be, 1-1. Newport penalties.
I am really struggling here because I think, do you know what? I think I'm going to have to steal your one from League One. I think it's going to go to extra time. And I think Morecambe are going to nick it by 2-1. I just think the battle of the experience, possibly one of the things you mentioned was legs and fatigue. Is the extra half an hour going to play into the minds a little bit? Is it going to have an effect? Because it's only a week's break, isn't it? Don't forget. So I think Morecambe are going to nick it. I haven't got any basis. I like to have, you know how me and Charlie work. We're not very good at it, but we like to have stats and basis to work on. And I just don't see a way that I can find a great reason for either of them to win it. I think they will largely cancel each other out. I think, again, it just comes down to which team on the day has got the right mentality. And because I've seen Newport falter before on these sorts of occasions, I'm going to go for Morecambe to nick it 2-1 after extra time.
And those are predictions for the playoffs this weekend. Do you agree with us, disagree with us? Let us know in the comment section down there. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter @HonestFootball3. And we'll see you next time.